You know that feeling, that little anxious flutter when you hear about the latest tech breakthrough, and you immediately wonder, are we doing enough? Are we falling behind?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially right now, with generative AI seemingly everywhere, it feels like there's a genuine race happening out there.
It's more than a feeling. It's a very real pressure point for businesses across the board. And that pervasive sentiment isn't just internally generated.
Right.
It's coming from every angle, boardrooms pushing for AI strategies, investors asking about AI ROI, and perhaps most potently, competitors making splashy announcements about their latest AI initiatives.
Yeah, see those headlines.
Exactly. It creates this incredibly intense sense of urgency, sometimes, while sometimes spilling over into outright panic.
And that palpable pressure is precisely where we're starting our deep dive today.
Mm.
We're pulling apart some fascinating insights from a source titled The AI Arms Race, Strategy for Business Survival. Our mission here is to cut through the relentless noise and hype that surrounds generative AI right now. We want to understand the true dynamics at play in this so-called race. Look squarely at the significant risks that come with just blindly rushing into things.
Which are very real.
Very real. And, most importantly, figure out how businesses can actually build a strategy for generative AI adoption that isn't just fast, but is genuinely sustainable and creates lasting value. We're here to extract the critical nuggets from this text to make sure you are well informed on this absolutely vital topic.
And the source material frames this landscape really compellingly. It highlights that generative AI isn't just being presented as another piece of software or, an optional upgrade.
Right, it's bigger than that.
It's framed as a fundamental strategic imperative across nearly every sector. The promises are huge. Radical innovation, significant cost reduction, unprecedented personalization in customer experiences. The potential is undeniable.
No question.
But right alongside that potential, the source immediately raises this critical question, and it's the central tension we'll explore throughout this deep dive. In this rush, are companies truly moving fast in the right direction, aligned with their business goals? Or are they simply moving fast, full stop, perhaps down a path that leads them away from their objectives entirely?
That tension feels incredibly relevant right now. You see companies everywhere announcing AI initiatives, launching pilot programs, hiring AI teams. But is that activity being driven by a clear, well-thought-out vision? Or is it a reaction to something else?
Very often, according to the source, that initial impetus is driven by the most powerful force in this perceived race, the fear of falling behind.
FOFB.
FOFB, it's almost become an industry term already, hasn't it? That pressure to keep up.
It has, and for good reason. The core problem, as meticulously detailed in the text, is that this deep-seated fear, this panic that gets triggered in executive meetings after reading analyst reports, hearing investor demands, or simply seeing competitor headlines,
Pushes organizations into making decisions that are inherently rushed. And because they're rushed, they're critically unfocused. The imperative becomes doing something with AI and doing it quickly, almost as a defensive reflex.
So it's less about strategic advantage and more about mitigating the anxiety of inaction. Just got to do something.
Precisely. And the source lays out the predictable consequences. Investments are made without a clear strategy tied to specific business outcomes. There's often insufficient understanding of the real business need or, frankly, a realistic assessment of the organization's actual readiness, the data infrastructure, the talent available, the existing workflows.
Right.
It's expenditure driven by anxiety, not opportunity analysis. Think about the initiatives you've seen announced recently in your own industry or organization. Ask yourself, are they tied to a clear, measurable business problem, or do they feel like a knee-jerk reaction to what a competitor just did?
That's a great point.
The source is telling us that gut check feeling is often correct. And those rushed, fear-driven projects are precisely where resources get wasted, sometimes with, detrimental outcomes.
Can we look at a concrete example from the source that really illustrates the fallout from this FOFB-driven approach? Something tangible.
Absolutely. The source provides a clear use case involving a large retail chain. They were operating relatively successfully, things were okay, but then they saw a key competitor successfully launch a sophisticated GPT-based virtual shopping assistant on their website.
Ah, okay. Competitor makes a move.
Exactly. This immediately triggered the FOFB throughout the retail chain's executive ranks. They felt an intense pressure to respond, and to respond fast, fearing they would lose market share to a competitor perceived as being more technologically advanced.
So, okay, they initiated their own virtual assistant project. Got to catch up.
Yes, and at breakneck speed. They bypassed typical strategic planning phases, the careful stuff, and initiated their own virtual assistant project with an accelerated timeline. But, as the source points out, the crucial missing piece was precisely that: proper planning.
The details got lost in the rush.
Completely. They were so focused on speed and matching the competitor's apparent capability that they didn't adequately plan for how the assistant would integrate with their existing customer data systems, how to curate and train the AI on their vast product catalog and customer query history, or even, a thoughtful design for the user experience.
And what was the inevitable result of that rushed, unplanned approach? I can almost guess.
Well, the outcome was quite detrimental to their customer experience, which is exactly the opposite of what they intended. The assistant, lacking proper training data, context, and integration with their back-end systems, started giving irrelevant product recommendations.
Oh, no.
It struggled to understand nuanced customer queries, often providing generic or confusing responses, just wasn't helpful.
Oh, no. That sounds like it would actively harm the customer experience, frustrating users rather than helping them.
It absolutely did. The source states that customer satisfaction scores for users who interacted with the AI plummeted. What was intended as a competitive move to enhance the user experience and keep pace instead created a negative interaction point that directly damaged their brand perception and customer loyalty.
Wow. So the core takeaway from this example and the broader concept of FOFB driving decisions, according to the source, what's the lesson here?
The key takeaway, drawn starkly from this example, is that AI adoption that is driven primarily by fear of falling behind, rather than a thoughtful, deliberate, and integrated business strategy, is essentially a recipe for significant inefficiency.
Right.
You expend resources, often substantial ones, but the return on investment is poor, or perhaps even negative, leading to not just wasted expenditure, but also missed opportunity to leverage AI effectively elsewhere. It's the difference between building something useful that solves a problem and just slapping something together because your neighbor got a shiny new gadget.
That makes perfect sense. It's that reactive versus proactive mindset.
Yeah.
Now, another pressure highlighted in the source is the perception that simply adopting generative AI provides this magical, long-lasting differentiation in the market.
Yeah.
Like, we have AI now.
Yes, there's definitely a tendency to think if we just get AI, we'll be unique and ahead of the pack forever. The source discusses the inherently fleeting nature of this differentiation when it comes to foundational generative AI capabilities.
Fleeting. Why is that?
Well, while being an early adopter can absolutely provide a temporary edge, a moment in the sun, the problem is that commoditization happens incredibly fast once a technology like generative AI becomes widely accessible and its core applications become apparent.
Is that because the underlying models and tools become easier to access, maybe more affordable and standardized over time?
Exactly. The technical and cost barriers to entry for implementing basic generative AI capabilities like generating text, simple images, or summaries drop rapidly as the technology matures and competition among providers increases.
Everyone catches up.
Right. So that initial wow factor, the novelty of using AI for a certain task, quickly fades as more and more players adopt similar capabilities. The market quickly adjusts. The advantage evaporates.
Is there a use case in the source that specifically illustrates this point about differentiation dissolving, seeing it happen?
Yes, the source uses the example within the news media industry and the early adoption of AI for rapid content generation. One particular news outlet began experimenting with and using generative AI to quickly produce summaries, particularly for fast-moving, data-rich topics like financial market updates or sports results immediately after a game. Their strategic aim was clearly to gain an SEO advantage by being the fastest to publish content covering these trending topics, potentially attracting more clicks and traffic.
Which, again, probably worked for a little while, right? Gave them an early boost.
For a brief period, yes, they likely saw some benefit from being first to market with this speed. But the source notes that within a surprisingly short time frame, we're talking mere months in some cases.
Well, that fast.
Yeah. Competitors observed this success and rapidly implemented their own similar AI-driven summary generation processes. The technology proved easy enough to adopt, and the application was straightforward, leading to widespread adoption across the industry.
And then what was the outcome of that widespread adoption of similar capabilities?
Yeah.
Everyone's doing the same AI summaries.
The inevitable result. Everyone's AI-generated content started looking remarkably similar. If multiple AIs are trained on similar news feeds and tasked with summarizing the same financial report or game results, the output, while technically correct, will naturally converge.
Right, the content itself became generic, homogenized.
Precisely. The differentiation, which was solely based on speed and the novelty of AI-generated text, vanished. And the source adds a crucial observation.
Hmm.
Once the AI-generated content became homogenized, feeling generic, lacking unique voice, deeper analysis, or human insight,
Hmm.
readers actually started discerning this, and for more in-depth understanding or unique perspective, began returning to human-curated and human-written sources. The initial SEO advantage wasn't enough to retain readership when the content quality felt like it came from a machine just duplicating the same facts as everyone else.
That's a powerful point. So the core takeaway here is that AI itself isn't the differentiator, but how you use it, the strategy behind it.
Absolutely. The key takeaway from the source is crystal clear. While generative AI may give you a valuable head start, that advantage is inherently temporary and will likely be quickly replicated. Your sustainable, long-term competitive edge doesn't come simply from having generative AI capabilities,
Right.
but from how uniquely, strategically, and deeply you apply it within your specific business context, integrating it in ways that are harder for competitors to copy, or using it to augment human skills in unique ways.
Mm.
It's the application and integration, not just the initial acquisition of the tool, that matters for lasting differentiation.
Okay, moving beyond just individual companies jockeying for position, the source also paints a picture of generative AI causing, well, industry-wide upheaval. It's not just about gaining an edge, it's about fundamental survival for some established players.
This is where the stakes get incredibly high. The source argues persuasively that AI isn't just optimizing existing processes. In many sectors, it's fundamentally redefining how value is created, delivered, and captured. This creates an intense, almost existential pressure on established players who are built on older models or processes.
Because if your core business relies on tasks that AI can now do dramatically faster or cheaper, you're facing a serious challenge.
Precisely. The source presents it as a stark choice for what it terms laggards in AI adoption within these transforming sectors. They face the immediate risk of adaptation, a rapid and often difficult transformation, or potentially outright extinction.
Extinction, that's strong language.
It is, but the speed of technological change and competitive response in some industries is accelerating to a point where standing still or moving slowly is no longer a viable option for long-term survival, according to this analysis.
Can you give us the use case from the source that illustrates this level of industry disruption? Where are we seeing this play out?
The source highlights the dramatic transformation happening in the legal tech sector. This is presented as a prime example of how generative AI, specifically the capabilities offered by advanced large language models, LLMs, is creating entirely new business models and capabilities that are fundamentally reshaping how legal services are provided.
Okay, legal tech.
Yeah.
How are startups and innovators using LLMs to disrupt traditional legal practices? What are they doing differently?
Well, the source lists several impactful applications that leverage the LLM's ability to process and generate text based on vast amounts of data. This includes drafting initial versions of contracts incredibly quickly,
Right.
automating the summarization of thousands of pages of deposition transcripts or case documents in minutes,
Oh.
and analyzing vast libraries of case law to identify relevant precedents or arguments with unprecedented speed and scale that, frankly, no human could match manually.
These sound like core, time-consuming, and traditionally high-cost tasks within legal work.
They absolutely are, and the impact on traditional law firms that are not adopting or integrating these AI tools into their practice is profound, according to the source.
What specifically happens to them? How does it hit their business?
They are actively losing clients. The source explains why. Startups and forward-thinking firms who have integrated these AI tools can offer services that are dramatically faster and significantly cheaper. Tasks that used to take highly paid lawyers or paralegals hours, if not days, and were billed accordingly, can now be completed in minutes with AI assistance, allowing firms to offer much more competitive pricing and faster turnaround times.
So the traditional firms are being undercut on both efficiency and cost, putting them at a severe disadvantage. They just can't compete on those metrics anymore.
Exactly. The source's takeaway here is unambiguous and serves as a strong warning. Ignoring AI or resisting its adoption in the context of these rapidly being reshaped industries is no longer just about missing out on a potential competitive advantage.
Just more fundamental.
It is presented as a direct survival risk. Entire sectors are being fundamentally redefined by these capabilities, and inaction for established players can be fatal to their business model.
Okay, so we've covered external pressures like fear of competitors, the quick evaporation of early AI differentiation, and industry-level disruption.
Yeah.
Huge forces. But the source also wisely delves into the significant internal challenges that businesses face in this race, right? Like the struggle to find and retain the right people, the talent.
Yes, that's a critical internal bottleneck. The source identifies the talent race. As the external competition for perceived AI dominance heats up among companies, an equally intense and often more immediate competition emerges within organizations for the scarce AI talent that actually exists.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Every company suddenly needs AI engineers, data scientists who understand machine learning, AI ethicists, even project managers who can oversee AI initiatives.
Right.
But the supply of people with those specific skills and experience hasn't magically expanded overnight.
Exactly. And the source notes that this lack of readily available in-house expertise is a significant limitation on progress, regardless of budget. You might have the capital to invest in expensive AI platforms and tools, but if you don't have the skilled people who know how to select, implement, manage, integrate, and refine them effectively within your business context, well, you're essentially stuck with underutilized or improperly deployed technology.
You've got the car, but no driver.
Pretty much.
Can you share the healthcare use case that illustrates this internal struggle for talent and expertise?
There is a good one. The source describes a major healthcare provider that publicly announced a bold, ambitious set of AI-first initiatives for improving patient care, administrative efficiency, and research. Sounded great.
Generated some positive buzz, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Looked promising from the outside. However, the reality on the ground, according to the source, was that they had no established, centralized, or cross-functional internal AI team dedicated to executing on these initiatives.
So they had the high-level vision and made the announcement, but the necessary organizational infrastructure and expertise weren't in place internally to actually support it.
Precisely. And what happened next is, unfortunately, a predictable consequence in a large organization lacking a cohesive AI strategy and centralized talent pool. Competing departments within the healthcare provider, say radiology, billing, research, began to independently pursue their own AI projects. They started hoarding what little AI talent they could either hire directly or secure from external vendors.
Like little disconnected AI silos popping up across the organization, each competing for the same limited resources, kind of fighting each other internally.
Exactly that. Each silo was trying to solve its own specific problem with AI, but without coordination. The consequence was inevitable. Duplicated efforts, where different departments were effectively trying to build similar capabilities from scratch using different tools or vendors.
Wasted effort.
Totally. This led to fragmented systems, inconsistent results across the organization's various AI projects, and a significant slowdown in overall progress towards the stated AI-first goal.
That sounds incredibly inefficient and frustrating for everyone involved. Must have been maddening.
It is. The source's takeaway from this vividly illustrates that truly winning with AI isn't just about acquiring technology or making grand public announcements about your intentions. It fundamentally requires investing in building capable, cross-functional, and AI-literate teams that can work together.
It's the people and structure.
It's about people, organizational structure, and strategic coordination, not just the procurement of tools. Without the right internal capabilities, even the best AI tools won't deliver on their promise.
Building on that idea of acquiring tools, the source also brings up a related problem that many organizations fall victim to in the rush, what it terms shiny tool syndrome.
Yes. A very common and expensive pitfall in any technology gold rush. The source describes this as both vendor overload and shiny tool syndrome. The underlying behavior is simple. In their eagerness to demonstrate progress and appear on the cutting edge, companies feel compelled to constantly buy into every new promising AI tool that appears on the market,
Oh, I see that.
often without rigorous evaluation.
Without stopping to think if that new tool actually fits their specific needs, their existing technology stack, or their overall strategy. Is it actually useful for us?
Exactly. They fail to adequately evaluate several critical factors. The tool's actual fit with their specific business processes, its compatibility and integration needs with their existing systems, CRM, ERP, etc., its potential privacy implications for customer or internal data, or even its long-term viability or cost. It becomes acquisition for the sake of acquisition, a checklist of having the latest AI gadgets.
Like collecting every new smartphone that comes out, but on an enterprise scale, and with much, much higher stakes.
A very expensive and disruptive version, yes. The source provides a vivid use case of this phenomenon occurring in a tech company's marketing department.
Okay, tell us about that situation. What happened there?
So this company Likely feeling intense pressure to leverage generative AI in its marketing efforts to boost creativity and personalization, adopted no fewer than 5 different generative AI tools within a relatively short period.
5 tools. Okay.
Yeah. They acquired separate tools specifically for copywriting, other tools for personalization engines, different ones for email campaign generation, and yet others for generating design assets like images or ad creatives. It was a veritable stack of disparate AI solutions.
Okay. Acquiring multiple specialized tools could potentially be powerful if used effectively, right? What went wrong here?
The critical failure, as highlighted by the source, was a complete lack of integration planning. The source states plainly that none of these 5 tools were designed to integrate or were actually integrated with each other or with the company's core marketing platforms like their CRM or analytics system.
Oh dear. That sounds like a recipe for chaos. Just a
Yeah.
jumble of tools.
This led directly and immediately to significant data fragmentation. Customer data, marketing campaign performance data, generated copy variants, design assets, personalization rules. They were scattered across these 5 different disconnected systems.
Wow.
It became incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to get a unified view of a customer journey or ensure consistency across channels.
So they couldn't easily connect the AI-generated copywriting output to the email tool
Mhm.
or use the personalization engine effectively because the customer data was siloed in the CRM or ensure the design assets matched the messaging. They weren't talking to each other.
Precisely. And the ultimate, very visible result, according to the source, was severe brand inconsistency across their various marketing channels: email, social media, website, ads. The lack of integration meant they couldn't maintain a cohesive brand voice, visual identity, or consistent customer experience, despite having all these theoretically powerful AI tools at their disposal. They had the tools, but they couldn't make them work together effectively for the business.
The takeaway here feels incredibly important, especially for businesses feeling overwhelmed by vendor options right now.
It is. The source's takeaway is that simply chasing every new, shiny tool without a unifying plan inevitably creates fragmentation and chaos. A successful AI strategy absolutely must be driven by and follow the overall business strategy, not the other way around.
Strategy first.
Yes. You identify the specific business problem or opportunity first, understand the required workflow and data, and then find the AI tools that fit cohesively into that plan and integrate with your existing infrastructure. Acquisition should follow strategy, not dictate it.
That point about integrating tools and planning leads us naturally to another critical risk. The source highlights one that is profoundly important, but frequently overlooked, or let's be honest, deprioritized in the frantic rush for speed, ethics, and regulation.
This is perhaps the most critical point the source makes about adopting AI responsibly and sustainably. It really is. The source makes a very strong and necessary case that in the race for speed and quick deployment, companies are frequently skipping or giving insufficient attention to establishing ethical guardrails and ensuring compliance with evolving regulations.
They're prioritizing getting something out the door quickly over considering the potential negative impacts or legal requirements. Move fast and break things, but maybe break the wrong things.
Precisely. They're so focused on deploying AI applications as fast as possible to gain a perceived advantage or simply tick the box that they neglect crucial steps like rigorously assessing potential biases embedded in the training data or algorithms,
Right.
ensuring compliance with evolving privacy regulations like GDPR or CCPA, or establishing clear internal governance frameworks for how AI is developed, used, and monitored. The boring but essential stuff.
And what's the potential blowback from skipping those essential steps? What happens when it goes wrong?
The source is unequivocal. The potential blowback can be incredibly severe, far outweighing any perceived early mover advantage. It can lead to significant legal challenges, resulting in massive financial penalties and costly litigation. And critically, it can cause immense damage to a company's reputation and erode the trust that customers and the public have in their brand.
Reputational damage can be huge.
Especially today. In today's interconnected world, news of ethical missteps or regulatory failures spreads like wildfire. It can undo years of brand building overnight.
There's a stark use case provided in the source that serves as a powerful cautionary tale about this risk, isn't there? The resume screener.
Yes, a very clear and unfortunately common example involving a firm that implemented an AI-powered resume screener. This tool was based on an LLM and was intended to efficiently filter the large volume of job applications they received, saving their HR team significant time. Sounds reasonable on the surface.
Sounds like a plausible application for AI efficiency in HR. What was the specific problem that arose? Where did it go off the rails?
The problem, as the source details, was that the LLM model used for screening was trained on historical hiring data from the firm. This historical data, unfortunately, contained inherent biases that reflected past hiring patterns within the company or the industry at large.
Ah, the data itself was biased.
Exactly. For instance, if historically certain roles or departments predominantly hired male candidates, the data would reflect that imbalance.
So the AI, in learning from that historical data, inadvertently learned and perpetuated those biases. It just replicated the past problems.
Precisely. The AI screener, in its attempt to identify ideal candidates based on past success patterns, systematically favored male candidates over equally or even more qualified female candidates, simply because the training data implicitly linked male gender to past success in those roles due to historical hiring practices, not merit.
Oh, that's a complete breakdown of fairness and, yeah, a legal minefield. Absolutely.
It absolutely is. The source states that once this discriminatory bias was discovered, likely through internal audit or observation of hiring outcomes, it quickly led to widespread media exposure. This wasn't just an internal issue, it became a very public problem,
Nightmare scenario.
escalating into a major PR crisis for the firm, damaging their reputation as an equitable employer. Subsequently, legal investigations were launched into their hiring practices based on potential discrimination claims.
So their rushed attempt at gaining efficiency through AI led directly to a public relations nightmare, legal scrutiny, and a potential lawsuits. The exact opposite of a win.
Precisely. The takeaway here, according to the source, is incredibly important and cannot be overstated. Being first to market with an AI application means absolutely nothing if your brand suffers irreparable damage and faces legal consequences due to ethical shortcuts or a failure to consider bias and regulatory compliance.
It undermines everything else.
Completely. AI governance proactively considering ethics, fairness, transparency, security, and regulatory compliance from the outset must scale with innovation. These considerations need to be an integral part of the development and deployment process, not an afterthought tacked on at the end. They need to be developed in parallel with the technology itself.
That use case alone provides such a compelling argument for taking a breath and ensuring these critical guardrails are in place before widespread deployment. Really makes you think. Now, shifting gears slightly from the pressures and pitfalls, the source also addresses a feeling that many organizations, perhaps smaller ones or those who felt slower to move, might experience right now. The sense of being too late to the AI party, feeling like they missed the boat.
Yes, this is a common psychological hurdle that can lead to paralysis or resignation. It's understandable. Many companies, especially those without vast R&D budgets or established AI teams, might look at the headlines and the rapid advancements from tech giants and feel a sense of despair, or that they've entirely missed the generative AI wave.
Yeah, what's the point now?
Exactly. This can lead them to either give up on serious AI adoption altogether or settle for very passive, low-impact uses that don't really move the needle.
Like the big guys have already won, so why bother trying to catch up? That kind of thinking.
Exactly, that kind of defeatist attitude. But the source presents a powerful and encouraging counter-argument to this too late myth. It explicitly states, you are absolutely not too late to benefit significantly from AI.
That's great to hear. Okay, so how does the source back up that claim and provide hope? What's the evidence?
It offers a compelling use case involving a niche e-commerce brand. This wasn't a multinational corporation. It was a smaller player focused on a specific product category.
Okay, a smaller business.
Right. The source notes that they initially delayed their serious AI adoption efforts, primarily because they perceived the cost of cutting-edge AI platforms and talent as prohibitive for their budget. They felt they couldn't compete on that front initially.
So they were starting later and had clear financial limitations compared to larger competitors. What strategic approach did they take when they were ready? How did they get started?
Instead of succumbing to the too late feeling, they took a very strategic and focused approach when they decided to engage with AI. They didn't try to buy the most expensive enterprise platforms. The source specifically mentions they leveraged open source LLMs.
Ah, open source.
Yes, models that are freely available or significantly less expensive to use and deploy than proprietary commercial models. They found a different path.
Okay, so they found a cost-effective entry point that bypassed the budget constraint. Smart. But how did they ensure that using a more accessible tool could still be effective and deliver real results? It can't just be about being cheap.
This is where their thoughtful approach paid off immensely and is a key lesson for everyone. They didn't just use the open source LLMs out of the box for generic tasks. They invested time in fine-tuning these models specifically on their own proprietary data.
Their own data.
In this case, a large volume of customer reviews they had collected over time. Really valuable stuff.
Tuning the AI on their own customer feedback?
Yeah.
That sounds like it would make the AI's output highly relevant and aligned with the specific language and preferences of their actual customer base, right? Speaking their language.
It did, precisely. By focusing the AI on understanding their customers' language, pain points, and preferences gleaned from reviews, they were able to use it for very specific, high-impact tasks.
Yeah.
The source states they primarily used it to significantly improve their product descriptions, making them more appealing and relevant to their specific audience by highlighting aspects customers consistently praised or asked about. They also use the fine-tuned AI to enhance their upselling efforts, likely by having it suggest relevant complementary products based on purchase history and the insights drawn from those reviews.
Smart, targeted applications based on their data. And what was the tangible business result of this focused, delayed, but smart, data-driven approach? Did it actually work?
The source states they saw a remarkable 20% increase in conversion rates directly attributable to these AI-driven improvements in product descriptions and upselling.
20% increase in conversions without buying those expensive enterprise-level platforms they initially thought they needed. That's huge.
Exactly. The takeaway from this is incredibly clear and powerful.
Yeah.
You are absolutely not too late to benefit from AI, even if you are starting later or have budget constraints.
That's really encouraging.
It is. Thoughtful, focused AI adoption that targets specific business problems and leverages data you already possess, even with more accessible, cost-effective tools like open-source LLMs, can still yield significant, measurable business results. Strategic entry points are always possible, regardless of when you start or the size of your initial investment. It's about smart application, not just speed or scale of spending.
That's a fantastic and necessary counter-narrative to the panic and the too late feeling.
Uh-huh.
It really reinforces that it's not about being the first to splash around, but about being smart and strategic in how you dive in. And speaking of smart adoption, the source is another crucial point about how we should fundamentally think about deploying AI, moving us beyond the initial hype. It talks about shifting from hype to hybrid. What does that mean?
This point directly addresses a danger that often arises from the initial hype around AI's capabilities, the temptation towards what the source calls over-automation. There's a tendency in the rush to automate everything that can be automated, to think about replacing human tasks entirely with AI, just swap it out.
The robot takes over completely.
Right. But the source warns that this can have negative consequences. It can alienate users, whether they are customers forced to interact solely with a poorly designed AI chatbot or employees whose roles are excessively automated without considering the workflow impact. And critically, it can lead to the loss of essential human context, empathy, judgment, and creativity that are difficult, if not impossible, for current AI models to replicate.
So removing the human touch risks, making the interaction cold, maybe inaccurate, lacking nuance, or failing in unexpected ways, because the AI just doesn't have full human understanding. It misses something important.
Precisely. The complexity of human interaction, decision-making in ambiguous situations, creative problem-solving, or tasks requiring emotional intelligence often involves factors and contextual understanding that current AI models simply don't fully grasp or replicate authentically. Attempting full human replacement in these areas can lead to significant failure points, frustrating users, and undermining the intended benefit.
So what's the more sustainable, effective alternative presented by the source? If not full replacement, then what?
The source introduces the vital idea of balancing AI capabilities with human intelligence. The most effective approach isn't AI or human, but AI and human working together, a partnership.
Augmentation rather than outright replacement, helping humans do their jobs better.
Exactly. The source frames it as creating a synergy where AI does what it does best, processing vast amounts of data, identifying patterns, performing repetitive tasks at speed, generating variations, and humans do what they do best, applying judgment, empathy, creativity, critical thinking, handling exceptions, and building relationships. The source uses a powerful use case in healthcare diagnostics to illustrate this principle.
Okay, healthcare diagnostics. Tell us about this specific scenario in the source.
So, A hospital deployed an AI diagnostic assistant designed to analyze medical images, such as x-rays or scans, and potentially patient data to identify anomalies or suggest potential diagnoses. The initial hope was likely that this could speed up the diagnostic process and potentially catch things human eyes might miss.
Sounds like a direct application of AI's pattern recognition capabilities.
I can.
Sense. How did the human element factor in? How did the doctors react?
Well, initially, according to the source, there was understandable distrust among the medical professionals, the doctors, regarding the AI's output.
Yeah, I can imagine. High stakes.
Absolutely. This is a common and reasonable human reaction, particularly in critical fields like healthcare. Doctors are highly trained professionals with years of experience, clinical intuition, and a deep understanding of complex patient contexts that go beyond just an image. They weren't going to blindly accept a machine's suggestion.
They needed to trust the system and validate its findings with their own expertise. They're still responsible.
Right. But the key shift that led to success happened over time. The hospital and its staff didn't abandon the tool because of the initial distrust or limitations. Instead, the doctors began to integrate it into their workflow and use it alongside their own analysis and expertise.
Yeah, using it with their judgment.
Exactly. They treated the AI's suggestions not as definitive answers, but as another data point, a potential flag, a second opinion to consider, or a way to quickly screen for possibilities. They applied their own clinical judgment, experience, and understanding of the individual patient's context to reach the final diagnosis.
So the AI didn't make the diagnosis. It served as a sophisticated assistant, augmenting the doctor's ability to make the final critical decision, helping them see more.
Precisely. And the documented result of this hybrid approach, the source states that by using the AI to augment human analysis and judgment, the overall accuracy of diagnoses significantly improved compared to using either the AI or the human doctor alone. Better together.
That is a powerful real-world example of symbiosis, the combined intelligence being greater than the sum of its parts. Really compelling.
It is. And the source's key takeaway here is fundamental to building sustainable advantage. The most impactful and sustainable competitive edge in the age of AI doesn't come from attempting to replace human intelligence or creativity entirely, but from creating a truly symbiotic relationship between AI and human judgment. It's about AI augmenting our capabilities, making us more efficient, more accurate, more creative, and more capable, rather than simply trying to do the human's entire job for them. That's the crucial shift from hype to hybrid in practice.
Okay, so we've taken a deep dive into the pressures driving the AI arms race, explored the significant pitfalls businesses fall into when they rush in without a solid plan, from the debilitating fear of falling behind and the quickly disappearing nature of initial AI differentiation.
Yeah, FOFB.
To the existential risk of ignoring industry disruption, the internal struggle for scarce AI talent, the chaos of accumulating too many disconnected tools, the critical danger of overlooking ethics and regulation in the rush.
So important.
The mistaken belief that it's too late to start, and the peril of over-automating and losing that essential human element. And we've covered a lot of ground on the problems.
We have. And we've seen how the source provides vivid use cases illustrating the real-world consequences of these pitfalls. But as you mentioned, the source doesn't just identify the problems, which is useful but not enough. It also lays out a clear path forward, presenting actionable strategies for actually building that sustainable competitive edge with AI, moving beyond the reactive race mentality to a proactive, thoughtful approach.
Right. Let's transition then from the diagnosis of the problems to the source's proposed solutions and strategies for building a sustainable edge. What's the first core strategy it proposes? How do we start doing this right?
Strategy number 1 is fundamental and counters that urge for grand, rushed announcements. Start small, iterate fast.
Start small, iterate fast.
Okay. The source emphasizes the critical importance of identifying specific, well-defined use cases for AI that have the potential for high impact on the business, but come with relatively low technical, operational, and ethical risk.
Find the right starting point.
Exactly. The goal here isn't to build the biggest, most complex, or most visible AI system right away. It's to find focused projects where you can quickly deploy, learn from real-world usage, build internal momentum, and demonstrate tangible value to the organization. Get some quick wins, basically.
Like carefully chosen pilot programs rather than massive organization-wide rollouts, testing the waters first?
Exactly. Small, contained pilots or proof of concepts allow you to test the waters with AI, understand the specific challenges unique to your organization's data and culture, identify unforeseen issues, and refine your approach based on actual results and user feedback before attempting to scale. It's about structured learning through doing, building expertise and confidence within a controlled environment, which is far more effective than a chaotic, large-scale deployment fueled by FOFB.
Okay, so start small and learn rapidly from those initial steps. Makes sense.
Right.
What's the next strategy the source outlines? Strategy 2?
Strategy 2 is crucial for long-term success and directly addresses the internal talent bottleneck we discussed. Build AI native culture.
AI native culture. What does that involve?
The source highlights that simply hiring a few AI experts in an R&D lab or IT department is insufficient. To truly embed AI for sustainable advantage, you need to elevate the AI literacy of your entire organization.
Everyone needs some understanding.
Yes, this means actively upskilling your non-technical teams, people in marketing, sales, HR, operations, customer service, so they understand what AI is, what it can and cannot do, how to interact with AI tools, and maybe most importantly, how to identify potential AI applications in their own daily work.
So it's about democratizing AI understanding and capability, making it a company-wide mindset, not just a specialized function locked away somewhere.
Precisely. And it's also about fundamentally aligning incentives and breaking down internal silos across the organization. Ensure that different departments or individuals aren't penalized for sharing data or collaborating on AI initiatives. Foster a culture where teams are rewarded for identifying and implementing AI solutions that benefit the entire business.
Instead of hoarding.
Rather than hoarding talent or data within their own domain, like we saw in that healthcare example, it's a cultural shift towards embracing AI as a pervasive company-wide capability and responsibility.
That makes perfect sense. AI needs to be understood and supported throughout the business structure to truly thrive beyond isolated projects. Okay, what about strategy 3?
Strategy 3 is absolutely foundational and often the biggest hurdle for established companies. Own your data.
Own your data. Sounds simple, but probably isn't.
It's huge. The source is very clear and emphatic here. Good AI, particularly generative AI, that needs to produce outputs relevant and accurate to your specific business context, whether it's understanding your customers, your products, your operations, or your internal knowledge base, relies absolutely on great, well-governed data.
The classic garbage in, garbage out, but magnified for powerful generative models. If the input is bad, the output will be too.
Exactly. If your data infrastructure is messy, fragmented across disparate legacy systems, plagued by inaccuracies, lacks clear ownership, or is locked away in inaccessible silos, your AI models, no matter how sophisticated or expensive, will struggle to perform effectively, reliably, or safely.
They'll make mistakes.
They might hallucinate incorrect information, provide irrelevant outputs, or perpetuate errors found in the data. This strategy emphasizes the absolute necessity of investing in robust data governance frameworks, data quality initiatives, and creating accessible, unified, and well-structured data sets that your AI teams, and potentially your wider workforce, can actually use ethically and effectively.
Get your data house in order first.
Absolutely. Data is the essential fuel for AI. Without a clean, reliable supply, the engine sputters.
So before you even spend big on the AI models or tools themselves, you have to get your data house in order. Unglamorous, but critical work.
Okay, strategy 4.
Strategy 4 is integrate, don't silo. This directly counters that shiny tool syndrome and vendor overload we discussed earlier.
Right, the disconnected tools problem. Yes. The source stresses the critical importance of embedding AI tools and capabilities directly into your existing workflows, business processes, and enterprise systems, rather than letting them sit as standalone experiments or isolated applications that users have to go out of their way to access.
Making AI a seamless part of how work gets done, not an add-on you have to remember to use.
Correct. Think back to the marketing example with 5 disconnected tools. If an AI tool designed for, say, assisting customer service agents sits entirely separate from your CRM system where all the customer interaction history is stored,
Yeah.
your agents won't use it effectively, the AI won't have the necessary context, and critical data won't flow back into your customer records. Sustainable advantage comes from making AI capabilities a fundamental, integrated part of how work flows through the organization every single day, not an interesting but ultimately isolated project running in a lab somewhere. Integration is key to driving real adoption and tangible business impact.
Integration for impact.
Got it.
Strategy 5, what's next?
Strategy 5 is measure outcomes, not hype. This brings us back to the FOFB-driven investments and the focus on appearances over substance. The source strongly urges businesses to move beyond focusing on superficial metrics or media buzz and instead focus relentlessly on tracking tangible, measurable business impact from their AI initiatives.
So prove it actually works and delivers value. What does that look like in practice? What should they be measuring?
It means defining clear, specific key performance indicators, KPIs, for every AI initiative from the outset, before you even start. Are you implementing AI to reduce the cost of a specific process? Measure the cost reduction. Is it to increase efficiency? Measure the time saved or throughput improved. Is it to improve customer satisfaction? Measure relevant CSAT scores.
Like the e-commerce example.
Exactly. Is it to boost sales conversions, like the e-commerce example? Measure the conversion rate directly. The source explicitly contrasts this with focusing on measuring things like how many articles were written about your AI project, how much social media buzz it generated, or simply how many AI tools you've acquired.
Vanity metrics don't pay the bills.
Right. Hype might feel good and generate temporary attention, but it doesn't deliver bottom-line value or build a sustainable competitive advantage. Focus on the business results. What actually changed?
Focus on tangible results, not just the headlines or activity. And these strategies collectively reinforce the idea of symbiosis, that hype-to-hybrid concept we talked about, right? They all kind of point that way.
Absolutely. You could consider the hype-to-hybrid shift not just a pitfall to avoid, but implicitly the sixth overarching strategy. Building an AI-native culture that embraces augmentation, integrating tools into existing human workflows, starting small and iterating based on human feedback and needs, using data to make AI relevant to human tasks. These all fundamentally build on the principle that the most powerful, resilient, and sustainable advantage comes from the intelligent partnership between AI and human judgment, rather than the simplistic goal of full automation or replacement.
It's about working with AI. Okay, so let's bring these winning strategies to life with one final powerful concrete example from the source that seems to weave several of these strategies together. It mentions supply chain optimization at a global logistics firm. That sounds complex.
Yes, this is presented as a great illustration of how combining several of these strategies can lead to significant, measurable success. The source describes a global logistics firm that successfully implemented generative AI capabilities specifically for optimizing complex supply chain operations.
Okay, logistics. What specific problem were they trying to solve with this AI application? What was the pain point?
They use generative AI to simulate incredibly complex and dynamic shipping scenarios and then suggest optimal routes and logistics plans. I mean,
Right.
think about the mind-boggling number of variables involved in global logistics.
Oh yeah, countless.
Fluctuating freight costs, volatile fuel prices, unpredictable weather patterns, port congestion updates, geopolitical events affecting shipping lanes, customs regulations, carrier availability. I mean, the list goes on. Manually planning routes and logistics, considering all these factors in real time across a global network, is an incredibly complex and time-consuming task, often relying heavily on human experience and intuition.
So the AI could process all that incoming, constantly changing data and complexity much faster, and maybe propose more efficient options than a human could calculate alone. See patterns humans might miss.
Exactly. The AI leveraged its capabilities to process vast amounts of real-time and historical data, simulate various scenarios rapidly, and generate suggested routes and logistics plans that factored in far more variables than a human planner could realistically manage simultaneously. And the source explains that over time, this generative AI capability wasn't just a cool experiment. It became a core integrated planning tool within their daily operations.
Core and integrated. That sounds like a perfect example of integration, measuring outcomes, and likely that symbiosis element too.
It absolutely is. It wasn't treated as a standalone experimental tool used occasionally by a specialized team. It was embedded directly into how their logistics planners made decisions every single day.
Part of the job.
Yes. The planners use the AI's output as a powerful recommendation engine, combining its data-driven suggestions with their own experience, knowledge of exceptions, and real-world intuition. They were clearly measuring its impact on core logistics, KPIs, things like transit times, fuel costs, and overall shipping expenditure. And the outcome, according to the source, was significant and tangible. They saved millions annually through improved route efficiency and resource allocation.
Millions saved directly through better planning and route optimization enabled by this integrated AI tool. That's a clear, measurable outcome. That's the goal.
Precisely. And the source explicitly states why this implementation was so successful where others fail. It worked because it was strategically designed and then embedded directly into the daily decision-making process of their expert planners. It wasn't treated as an AI lab project or a shiny tool to show off. It became a fundamental part of their business workflow, demonstrating real, measurable impact and augmenting the capabilities of their human experts.
That's a powerful success story that brings so many of these sustainable strategies together.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about reacting out of fear, but addressing a specific, complex business problem.
Yeah.
It wasn't about just having a cutting-edge tool, but about integrating it into the core workflow.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about generating hype, but about saving millions. And crucially, it was about augmenting the deep expertise of their logistics planners, not attempting to replace that vital human judgment entirely. It really embodies that shift from hype to hybrid.
It really does. It shows the power of combining strategic intent, thoughtful integration, a focus on measurable outcomes, and that essential symbiosis of AI and human intelligence. That's the winning formula described here.
Well, we've taken quite the journey through this AI arms race as described in the AI Arms Race, Strategy for Business Survival. We've explored the immense pressures driving companies to move fast, sometimes too fast, and the common, costly pitfalls that result. From the debilitating fear of falling behind, the fleeting nature of that initial AI edge, and the risk of ignoring existential industry disruption to the internal struggle for scarce AI talent, the chaos of accumulating too many disconnected tools, the critical danger of overlooking ethics and regulation in the rush,
Can't stress that enough.
the mistaken belief that it's already too late to start, and the fundamental peril of over-automating and losing the essential human element that often provides the most valuable context and judgment. We saw a lot of ways things can go wrong.
And crucially, we've extracted and elaborated on the core strategies the source presents for businesses to navigate this landscape successfully and build a truly sustainable competitive advantage. These strategies are about moving beyond reactive panic to proactive planning, starting small with focused, high-impact, low-risk projects to iterate and learn, building an AI native culture that elevates AI literacy and collaboration across the entire organization, recognizing that owning and preparing your data is a fundamental prerequisite. Get that house in order.
Foundation.
Integrating AI tools deeply into existing workflows, rather than allowing them to sit in isolated silos, and relentlessly measuring tangible business outcomes, focusing on real value creation rather than just media mentions or buzz. All while continuously reinforcing that vital principle of symbiosis, recognizing that the most powerful and sustainable advantage comes from the intelligent partnership between AI capabilities and unique human judgment and creativity.
It really boils down to the core message from the source, doesn't it? This race isn't ultimately about who adopts AI the fastest or who spends the most money on the latest tools. It's about who adopts it the most wisely.
That's it.
The businesses that will truly thrive and lead in this new era are the ones that can successfully combine a clear, forward-looking strategy, robust governance and data foundations, and effective integrated execution that leverages the best of both artificial and human intelligence.
And the source leaves us with a truly provocative and important thought, one that encourages you, the listener, to consider the deeper implications of this technological shift beyond just the technical capabilities or competitive positioning. It shifts the focus from speed and capacity to purpose and impact.
What is that final thought the source leaves us with? How does it frame the ultimate challenge?
It asks us to consider that the question isn't simply, can your business keep up in the AI race? It's a more fundamental and challenging question. Can your business lead without losing its soul?
Lead without losing its soul. A powerful idea to consider as you navigate your own path and your organization's journey in the transformative age of AI.